Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, the Bearded Shaman of Game, and bringing you reviews at the speed of embargo. And today, I bring you the review for No Man's Sky for the PC and PS4, the freelancer-styled Minecraft-inspired spaceship flying consumables crafting game that really sometimes does less to remind you of those titles and more to make you think that some elite hacker thought that programming the Da Vinci Code into an Apple II computer was going to be a good idea, especially after you sit down and hear Hello Games discuss this title at length. So let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's the review for No Man's Sky, Destiny UI Bliss, Nightmare-fueled dairy creatures, and Torquemada's version of an inventory. Graphics are up first. No matter which way you look at it, No Man's Sky is a heady game that aims pretty much to cover the universe's aspects from neck to nuts, from the ground level on planets up to stars and everything in between. No Man's Sky is a first-person FPS exploratory space dogfighting survival game. There's one game that tried to do something somewhat like this years ago, though in a different frame set, and while generationally exceeding anything in that title, which of course was Spore, No Man's Sky still wears its heritage of procedural generation all over itself, with low-resolution textures, bulbous, oddly shaped character heads, and unicorn just exploded color sets. And sadly on the PS4 it leads you through the game world with an FOV like a street horse and blinders, and I swear it has to be worse than Homefront Revolution, and that FOV was actually codenamed Dramamine. Now another issue is the 30 frames per second frame rate. It's smooth sometimes, but other times things can get really jittery, resulting in pop and stop Michael Jackson animals scooting their way across multicolored landscapes, and that is as frightening as it sounds. Now, due to everything being procedurally generated, that also means the creatures and of course their animations are as well, which also means cows with tentacle legs and six-legged goat steeds preening, prancing, pawing, walking, running, and rampaging all around you. It's a questionable affair anyway, with some creatures coming remarkably close to normal animation routines, while others somehow delivering a first-hand view of what hell would look like. While the worlds look consistently capable up close, their continual fade-in, though in a dithered fashion, does bring down the appearance, despite mammoth mountains, alien architecture, and vast vistas that really stretch across the horizons, and offer some really cool moments. Also, the vegetation can look remarkable, from alien vines hanging down from caves to seaweed swirling in underwater currents. Grass, though, planetside apparently has prison memories, because it won't turn its back on you, shifting and turning so that its 2D face consistently meets your own. Now, the one nice thing is that the overall design is incredibly organic and holistic throughout the entire experience. From ships to stations to swimming creatures, it all exists within a familiar world. Since everything is procedural, sometimes things might look a little funny with a spaceship that looks like a Maytag washer, but then again, Ford made the Pinto, and in all honesty, I think real life trumped the game in that one. As a complete package, I personally think that No Man's Sky has moments of absolute brilliance. The sun breaking through the atmosphere and shedding that really thick glow all along the planet's surface, or the twist of spaceships in battle in multicolored nebula and many planets that are just really fantastic. But it is held down by various technical issues that are, well, completely noticeable. Luckily enough, we've already seen one patch fix some of those. Sound, music, and voice. And of course sound is up first because, you know what? Sound matters. It's actually good, while some of it is a bit teeny, with lasers sounding more like they belong in a children's game of cowboys and Indians, with both teams yelling pew 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 at one another. For the most part, everything else is actually pretty excellent. The crazy procedural sounds of creatures can be goddamned haunting, though, especially when you're on an alien planet and it's a little after midnight and you hear something down a crevasse. Sound processing, echo, reverb, and stereo separation are really excellent, lending a nice wide envelope of sound, whether you're in space or in the muffled low roll of underwater accidental grenade drops, which I've done multiple times. Very good sound as a complete package. And of course, after sound is music. It's good. While it's procedural, which is fine, there are moments where the cues are decidedly more aggressive than the action on hand, resulting in walking down a valley between two giant pink flowers with an alien version of taps slamming out in digital drums from both sides. This results in some really, really odd mixes. Now that being said, when you're traveling between planets or exploring the dark recesses of these weird underwater trenches, that ambient music can do an incredible amount to really solidify the atmosphere, and it is decidedly unique, that's for sure. Voice. Honestly, most of it is just goofy alien voices, and they do well to lend this ethereal atmosphere, I think, to the strange bipedal races that you are going to consistently see throughout the game, but there wasn't anything really special when it came down to it. Gameplay. So No Man's Sky really does something simple but ultimately insanely complex and daunting at the same time. It really just says, hey, you know what? Come on into this universe, mix in Freelancer, Mercenaries, Dig Dug, and your high school auto class all into one. You basically start out on a planet with a busted ship, no real story, by the way, behind it until much later. You need to begin using your multi-tool to break down items in the game world like rocks, minerals, trees, and other items so that you can get those into their requisite atoms so that you can fix that ship. So plants break down into carbon, giant blocks of metal break down into titanium, and in the world's most egregious use of natural survival of the fittest, plutonium is just sticking up in huge crystals. Not exactly quite sure what the kids are going to look like. You begin learning the somewhat complex dance of items pretty quick, where some are used in their basic form, while others are combined, and combined again to create more technologically advanced items. And still others are used in both ways, and we'll discuss that in a bit. Now, once you get the initial ship running, you jump in and the magic begins. This is where you sort of reveal this 3-arc story where you get to take one of those arcs and try to make it from your random starting planet and end up ultimately going to the center of the universe. Now, you'll be doing that with a series of hyper jumps from star to star to star to star, all of which cost you resources, resulting in your main gameplay loop, which is you spending time in the systems themselves to mine for resources for your next jump. Now, much of the magic here is that Hello Games have constructed No Man's Sky not of pre-baked levels or structures of puzzle pieces, but using procedural generation to mimic pretty much everything you see the moment you hyperjump into a system to leveling out of it. Think of it this way. When I sit down to a puzzle or to make a level, that puzzle is easily viewable on the back of that box. I put it together with that plan, piece after piece. Hello Games sits down, and by placing one puzzle piece and using a bit of magical math, the puzzle says, oh shit, wipes his hands off and fucking puts itself together. Lands, weather, birds, turds, crocodile things, hunchback goats, reptiles, everything. You see, since it's procedural, these rules can be applied and changed, and little aspects can be altered, so every planet is differently created and filled with completely unique creatures, though all are going to be based on a wide template that still fits some rules to make things not be too unrealistic. If you've ever played Sid Meier's Spore, and no matter how fucked up you made your alien, they always look like they were a creature from, well, Spore. Same thing's going to apply from here. Now, from that point on, it's your job to explore, fight, hunt, drill, dig, and dodge your way to the center of the universe. Now, while the game isn't doing its best to replicate a unicorn exploding, it's showing you that something can be one part amazing, one part what the hell. For example, I've rarely seen a game's first hour so contingent and being so relaxed when it comes to it on randomness. While some gamers may have started in lush areas with the benefit of at least some overabundance of materials to make up for boneheaded construction mistakes or just plain old not knowing what they're doing, other times you may start out on what could charitably be called the universe's version of Mickey Rourke. With barely anything to use and hours of slaving away smashing rocks looking for that single bit of plutonium, you rush back to your ship, your genitals popping and cracking like popcorn from the radiation, in hopes that you can get just enough to jet off of that first planet, and it can take a long time. You see, in games, really all games, starting locations change gameplay loops. Always have, always will. While some simply change the gameplay system's initial timing and rollout, some inevitably alter them completely by altering the player's position within the gameplay loop. Just like, say, a money code makes small jobs in open world games pretty useless. That's removing you from the gameplay loop. Sadly, No Man's Sky is the latter, resulting in some dire straits if you end up pulling the short end of the stick when you end up starting your new game. And then, of course, there's the dementedly complex crafting system I spoke about before. Actually, scratch that. It's not complex, it's just odd, with items being melted into each other again and again and again and again. And sometimes you need two complex items to make one major super item, so that means mixing like 14 reagents across two of their own upgrade paths so you can end up making a frickin' Scooby snack. Add to that the issue that many times the basic parts are also used for moving around and doing, basic stuff. It's not impossible to handle, but that T-bar design of complex interactions means that there will inevitably be an oh crap moment as you create something with an item you needed to use for, generally moving around. Or take, for example, the fact that 3 different thrusters on my spaceship need basically 3 different fuels, which I guess is funny enough if you don't need those for anything else. If you do, there are times where you're stuck on a planet with no way to make fuel, and lo and behold, you basically spend a couple nights Matt Damon Martian style until you succumb to slow, suffocating heat or freezing. Don't get me wrong, though, it's that subtle push-pull that will keep you in places for a good deal of time, scouting out immense labyrinthian caves that could make Batman jealous, spelunking to insane depths into the cores of rocky supergiants, and of course, swimming to the bottom of lush blue seas. It's all very cool stuff. It's just that it can be goddamn insufferable. Imagine if your engine, handgun collection, and spouse all ran off gasoline and you needed to figure out how to defend yourself from attackers, get your spouse to the car, and drive away, all with 1 ounce of unleaded. What's really surprising about No Man's Sky is that the gameplay systems actually roll out sort of slowly. It's rare we see that, and for me it was sort of fantastic here. My gameplay from hours 10 through 20 were different than 20 through 30, and after discussing it with others that had got that far, it was backed up every time. While the first moments as you're gathering and getting behind that stick of your first vehicle are really hard fought and won, the later ones are as well, but instead the gameplay subtly shifts from survival to survival balanced with exploratory gameplay. Of course, I think that's normal for a lot of games, but the balance here was just really well done. You know, explorers in real life are a friggin' sad bunch, dying of pants shit and diseases, scalping, slow burning, starving, cannibalism, and of course shots to the heart, and then some just getting lost. And that can happen here too, and it did to me. A couple of my deaths were so ingeniously interwoven with this slow decay into starvation on a solitary world as I tried to fight for survival that I was really positively reminded No Man's Sky was one of those situations where when I died, no one would ever see my body again. And of course, that's not the only way you can die. You can also die from ship-to-ship combat. And during that time, I would say the AI was okay, fairly basic, without any real high or low marks. They basically flew away from me and then flew towards me and fired. But for the kind of situations we were in, I think that was actually pretty okay. Now, control also, it was a little weird. It was fairly weighty despite sensitivity adjustments, leaving this feeling of input lag. But really, bugs were what bothered me. They consistently plagued me across many controllers. Sometimes when coming out of warp, the game would triple the PS4's inputs, resulting in any movement sending my ship flipping, slipping, sliding, and slamming into anything that was nearby. All told, I probably only died once or twice from that. To me, No Man's Sky was really at its best in its later hours, when the grind of those odd systems and the oddity of procedural generation are sort of forgotten within the travel. That's when the excellence, at least for me, was noticed. Fun factor. Yeah, despite all that, actually there was a lot of times that were fun. Now, today it was proven that it does not have overlapping multiplayer, as two people were in the same place at the same time and couldn't see each other. And almost all of the alien locations that you're going to visit, start, or end at in the game look identical. But that doesn't really stop the amazing feeling of sort of walking around a world, getting in a quick dogfight, or exploring the deep confines of a solar system that you drop into. Sadly, that's tempered by the games having robotic guards that attack you if you kill too many creatures or, get this, mine too much. Guess what you need to do in the game to move forward? That's right, mostly mining. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touched again rating scale. This is actually a rent or a wait for a deep sale. It just took too long for the gameplay to really get rolling. You know, in that 10 to 15 hour mark, I really started to enjoy myself. At 20 plus, I was really enjoying myself. I have always said that if a game takes that long, it is actually a poor game. That is true. There is just no denying that. It doesn't matter if it was a 2,000-hour game. If those first couple hours are just not that enjoyable, or there are a lot of issues there, then ultimately it's just not that good of a game. So when it comes down to it, this is a game that I'm really excited to see the patches. Very high chance of me doing a re-review, but right now there are enough issues with the control, and it did crash on me 4 times, and issues with the graphics that I just feel that it is best to hold off on this. Deep sale would probably be right, at least for now. So anyway, as always, if you guys liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. Remember, I've got a Twitter, Reddit, Patreon. Feel free to check me out anywhere there. As always, peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.